The wind on Dragonstone did not flatter age. It pushed at Olenna Tyrell's bones as if the sea itself disapproved of her refusal to die. She stood anyway, spine straight, cloak snapping behind her, and read the letter again in the thin morning light. The ink had smeared slightly from salt. Proof the message had crossed hands that sweated and feared. A dockman's hand, perhaps, or a gold cloak's, or a woman's who sold onions at the gate and listened with the patience of hunger. Daenerys Targaryen watched Olenna with a stillness that looked like calm until you learned to recognize it for what it was. Restraint under strain. The queen's jaw was set. Her eyes kept drifting toward the sky where Drogon's shadow sometimes crossed the clouds like a thought she could not swallow. "What does it say?" Daenerys asked. Olenna did not answer immediately. She held the parchment up so Tyrion Lannister could see the scrawl. His eyes flicked over it, then tightened. "They're meeting," Tyrion murmured. "Roston confirmed." "Roston," Daenerys repeated. "The paymaster." Olenna folded the letter, slow as a ritual. "Gold buys food," she said. "Gold buys swords. Gold buys silence. It also buys men who decide whether your enemies can walk through a gate." Daenerys's gaze sharpened, as if she disliked how simple it sounded. "And what does he want?" "Safety," Olenna said. "Coin, yes, but coin is only a way of pretending you're not afraid. He wants to survive whatever comes next." Grey Worm stood a few paces behind, eyes forward, expression carved from discipline. "We can take the city by force," he said. "This is slower." "It is slower," Olenna agreed. "And that is why it will last." She turned her head slightly, letting the wind tug her hair loose from its pins. "Force wins gates. It doesn't win streets. Not without burning them." Daenerys's hands tightened on the stone parapet. "I will not burn them," she said, as if the words needed to be said aloud to stay true. Tyrion glanced at her, then at Olenna, as if caught between relief and dread. Olenna recognized the look. Men who had watched fire once were always waiting for it again. "Then you must learn a different kind of cruelty," Olenna said softly. Daenerys's eyes flashed. "Cruelty?" "Yes," Olenna said. "The cruelty of patience. The cruelty of letting your enemies twist in their own fear while you stand still. It is much easier to lash out and call it justice." Daenerys's throat moved. For a moment she looked almost young again, almost like a girl who had learned to command armies before she learned how to sleep without nightmares. "And if she burns the city first?" she asked, quiet. Olenna let the silence stretch because silence was sometimes the sharpest answer. "Then you will have saved nothing by being merciful," she said. "Which is why we are cutting out the wildfire before she can strike." Tyrion's voice came out rough. "Varys' people are inside the city. Grey Worm's men will follow." Quietly, Daenerys turned her head toward the sea. The water below Dragonstone was slate dark, streaked with whitecaps. "Quiet," she repeated. "Always quiet. It's how you win without making songs about your monsters," Olenna said. Daenerys's gaze returned, hard. "You don't trust me." Olenna smiled, a brief lift at the corner of her mouth. "I trust you to want the right thing," she said. "I do not trust you to always choose it when it hurts." That landed. Tyrion's shoulders tensed as if expecting Daenerys to explode. Instead, Daenerys exhaled, slow. "Then make it hurt less," she said. "Tell me what you need." Olenna's eyes narrowed with something like approval. "A queen who asks for instruction is a rare sight," she said. "I need your face in the sky again, once. No fire. No roar. Just a reminder." Grey Worm stiffened. A dragon above the city could cause panic. "Panic is useful," Olenna said. "Panic with no flame becomes awe. Awe becomes rumor. Rumor becomes permission." Daenerys's lips pressed together. Then she nodded once, sharp. "Today," she said, "when the second shipment reaches the docks." Olenna tucked the letter into her sleeve. The wind tugged at it, eager as a thief. "Good," she said. "And while you are frightening them kindly, I will be buying the men who decide whether Cersei can still call herself queen in her own streets." Tyrion watched Olenna as if she were a weapon he wasn't sure he could safely hold. "You enjoy this?" he said under his breath. Olenna met his gaze unblinking. "I enjoy the thought of Cersei losing without fire," she replied. "It's a cleaner revenge, and it teaches your sister a lesson she never learned." She turned back toward Daenerys. "Power is not a scream. It's a door that opens because people believe it should." Daenerys stared at King's Landing across the bay, far enough away to look like a toy city carved from pale stone. "Then we will make them believe," she said. Olenna listened to the words and felt the web tighten, strand by strand, drawn across water and fear and the city's own hunger. The drunken swan sat on a side street that pretended it wasn't near the docks. Its sign, a crudely painted bird slumped over a cup, swung in the damp wind, squeaking like a guilty conscience. Inside, the air was thick with stale ale and sweat, and every surface clung to grime as if cleanliness were treason. Paymaster Roston kept wiping his palms on his breeches. He was a round man with small eyes and a throat that bobbed like a frightened chicken's whenever someone laughed too close. He had the look of a man who had survived by always knowing who to flatter. Armory Keeper Hollis sat beside him, thinner, sharper, his face pocked from old illness. Hollis didn't drink. He watched the door as if expecting it to kick open and spill the mountain into the room. A hooded man slid into the bench opposite them, moving like someone who belonged anywhere he chose to sit. He lowered his hood just enough for them to see his face. Ordinary, forgettable, the kind of face that could vanish in a crowd by simply turning sideways. "Merrick," he said, as if the name meant nothing. "Probably didn't." Roston swallowed. "You're late." Marek's eyes flicked over the room. Gold cloaks in the back were laughing too loudly, a deliberate performance of loyalty. A singer in the corner plucked at a lute with the weary persistence of a man paid in copper. "I'm careful," Merrick said. "Late is safer than dead." Hollis's voice was dry. "We're all dead if this goes wrong." Merrick reached into his cloak and placed a small pouch on the table. It landed with a soft, rich clink that cut through the tavern noise in a way laughter never could. Roston's eyes snapped to it, hunger in them sharper than fear. "That's a down payment," Merrick said, "for a door that opens when it should." Roston's breath came quick. "We're not opening doors," he hissed. "Not yet. The Queen." "The Queen is not in this room," Merrick said, and his voice was calm enough to make it sound like a kindness. "And the Queen you serve is not the Queen who will feed your children if the city burns." Hollis's jaw tightened. "We don't have children," he muttered. "Then you have a neck," Merrick said. "Same principle." Roston's fingers crept toward the pouch. Merrick placed a hand over it, gently stopping him. "Not just coin," he said, and slid a parchment across the table. It was rolled tight, sealed with plain wax. "No lion, no dragon. Just a circle, smooth and blank, like a promise made in secret." Roston stared at it. "What is that?" "Pardon," Merrick said. "Signed in advance. The Queen across the sea understands that men do what they must to survive. She is willing to forgive you for choosing the right side before it becomes obvious." Roston's laugh came out as a wheeze. "Forgive?" he repeated, as if tasting a foreign word. "And if she loses?" Marek's eyes did not blink. "Then you will be hanged," he said, "probably slowly. Cersei Lannister does like a lesson." Roston shuddered. "You talk too easily about hanging." "I've seen it," Merrick replied. "Enough to know which queens make it a spectacle and which queens make it unnecessary." Hollis leaned in, voice low. "What do you want?" Marek's hand withdrew from the pouch. "Names," he said. "Which captains are loyal to coin, not to fear. Which patrol routes can be delayed. Which gates are staffed by men who can be trusted to hold a line without spilling a river in the street." Roston's breath came quick. "That's treason." "It's preparation," Merrick said. "Treason is what Cersei did when she blew the September to ash and called it law. At the mention of the September, Hollis's eyes flickered. He had been there. Most men in King's Landing had been there, if not in body then in memory. Everyone remembered the green light. Everyone remembered the sound like the world cracking open. Roston glanced around the tavern as if expecting ghosts. "She'll kill us," he whispered. "She'll kill you anyway," Merrick said. "When she needs someone to blame, when she needs to scare the city into obedience, she will pick men like you first, because men like you are useful until they are not." Roston's fingers closed around the parchment with trembling greed. "And what about the gold cloaks?" he whispered. "If they turn, if they hesitate, she'll bring the Kingsguard, the mountain. She will threaten," Merrick said. "And threats only work when people believe the threat is the future. We are building you a different future." He leaned closer, voice barely above breath. "When the moment comes, you do not need to fight for Daenerys Targaryen. You only need to refuse to fight for Cersei Lannister." Hollis swallowed, throat tightening. "Refusal gets you killed." "Not when the city is watching," Merrick said. "Not when the faith is shouting. Not when the people you're supposed to police are suddenly the people deciding whether you live." His eyes sharpened. "Tell me, Hollis, how many gold cloaks do you have? Who would rather stand with bread than with wildfire?" Hollis hesitated. Then, slowly, he said, "More than you'd think." Merrick nodded once, satisfied. "Good," he said. "Then we begin with 2 captains. Quiet ones. Men who drink and complain and will do anything to avoid dying for a queen who would never learn their names." Roston's lips quivered. "And the gates?" Marek's smile was faint. 2 gates, he said. "Not open, not yet, just watched. When the city starts to move, when Cersei starts to claw, you will know which way the wind is blowing." Roston clutched the pardon like it could ward off death. "And if the wind blows wrong?" Merrick reached into his cloak again and pulled out a second pouch. Smaller, heavier. He set it down with deliberate care. "Then you run," he said. "And you pray you run faster than Cersei's vengeance." Roston stared at the pouches and parchment and looked, for the first time, like a man who understood the true price of the coin he counted. Outside, the city groaned in its sleep. Inside, the first betray. El took root like a seed watered with fear. The Unsullied did not belong in King's Landing. Even disguised, even with tar on their hands and rough wool on their backs. They moved with a discipline the city did not understand. King's Landing was a place where men swaggered and shouted, where bravado was mistaken for strength. The Unsullied were quiet. Quiet made people uneasy. Grey Worm did not come himself. He would have been recognized too easily, the foreign commander with eyes like ice and a face too controlled. Instead, he sent 12 men, his best, men who could disappear into shadows and still remember every step. They entered the city in pairs at different gates under different stories. One pair carried nets and claimed to be fishermen. Another hauled barrels and claimed to be coopers. 2 walked empty-handed, looking like men who had lost everything and were looking for work. They met in an alley near the docks where the stink of fish fought with the stink of sewage and lost. A gold cloak captain waited there, helmet tucked under his arm, his cloak damp with fog. His name was Captain Rennick, and his eyes darted like a man who had already envisioned his own execution. He lifted 2 fingers, a signal agreed upon in a letter that had not been signed. 1 finger meant danger, 2 meant clear. 2. The Unsullied leader, a man called Coro, a name given by Missandei because the man's old name had been cut out of him, nodded once. He did not speak. He did not need to. His men moved as if they shared one mind. Rennick stepped aside and pointed to a sewer grate half hidden under piles of rotting rope. "Down there," he whispered. "You weren't here. I wasn't here." Coro's gaze held him for a heartbeat, cold, assessing. Then Coro reached down and lifted the grate with ease that would have astonished dockworkers. The smell that rose was a living thing, thick and foul, the city's rot-made air. 1 Unsullied tied a rope to a nearby post. Another lowered a lantern hooded so its light would not spill into the alley. Coro descended first, boots finding slimy rungs, body vanishing into the dark like a stone sinking into water. Below, the tunnels of King's Landing breathed damp and heat. Water dripped from brick. Rats scurried, unbothered by men. The Unsullied moved single file, careful not to splash. Sound carried in tunnels. Sound was a weapon. They followed a route mapped by men who had crawled these passages since childhood. Varys's little birds, now grown into thin men with hard eyes. One of those men waited at a junction, hood up, face obscured. "No names," the man whispered. Coro nodded. The man pointed down the left passage. 2 turns, then a crack in the wall. Behind it, Coro's men moved. They found the crack. It was narrow, hidden behind a curtain of moss and slime. One Unsullied pried at the bricks with a small iron bar. The mortar crumbled. A brick came free, then another. A faint green light leaked through. It painted their hands the color of poison. Behind the bricks was a small chamber no bigger than a pantry. Inside, stacked like treasure, were jars of wildfire. Glass globes filled with green liquid that pulsed faintly, alive with heat. 1 dozen, 2 dozen, more. A rope ran among them, coiled and knotted, leading to a clay pot filled with dried pitch. A trigger, simple, brutal. Light it, and the chamber becomes a mouth that spits death into the tunnels and up through the city like a curse. Coro's men did not hesitate. One spread wet sand across the floor to smother any spill. Another wrapped each jar in thick cloth soaked in water, as if cradling infants that could bite. A third cut the rope in 3 places, careful not to jerk it. One jar trembled as it was lifted. The Unsullied holding it froze, breath held. The green liquid inside sloshed, glowing brighter. Coro reached out and steadied the jar with both hands, gentle as a priest. The jar settled. For a heartbeat, the chamber felt like a heart that might stop if they moved wrong. They moved anyway. They carried the jars out one by one, slow and controlled. They did not stack them again. They did not rush. Rushing was how accidents became catastrophes. At the junction, the hooded man waited, eyes wide at the sight of the jars. "There are more," he whispered. Coro nodded. They spent the night moving through tunnels and hidden chambers, finding caches like buried sins. Some were small 6 jars tucked behind a wall in an abandoned cellar. Some were huge, rows upon rows beneath a street that ran close to the Red Keep, as if the city's veins had been filled with fire. Above them, King's Landing slept and dreamed of bread. At dawn, the Unsullied surfaced in a different alley near the river. They emerged like ghosts, hauling sacks that looked like refuse. Inside those sacks, cushioned in wet cloth, were the city's green death. Captain Rennick waited, sweating. "You're done," he whispered, incredulous. Coro's eyes met his. For a moment, Rennick saw something in them that made him step back. A certainty so absolute it was terrifying. Coro nodded once. Rennick swallowed. If she finds out." Coro did not answer. He turned and vanished into the city's morning fog, his men flowing after him like dark water. Rennick stood alone in the alley and realized, with a sick twist, that the city's survival now depended on strangers who did not even speak its language. Cersei chose the square because it was visible from the Red Keep. She liked her lessons close enough to feel. The morning was gray, the kind of day that made the city look tired. A wind came up from the river, carrying the smell of fish and sewage and new bread. An insult that made Cersei's mouth twist. She stood on the balcony in dark velvet, hair pinned back like a crown of daggers. Qyburn hovered at her side, murmuring names and suspicions in that gentle tone that made everything sound reasonable. Below, in the square, the gallows stood freshly built. The wood was pale, new, still smelling faintly of sap. A man knelt beneath it with his hands bound. He was a dock worker, one of those who had shouted too loudly, who had waved bread like a banner. His lips were split. One eye was swollen shut. Ser Gregor Clegane held him by the collar as if he were a sack of grain. Gold cloaks formed a line around the square. Their faces were set, but not all with loyalty. Some looked away. Some stared too hard, as if watching could justify their presence. Captain Rennick stood near the front, jaw clenched so tight the muscles trembled. The small folk gathered at the edges, drawn by fear and curiosity the way flies were drawn to rot. Many held crusts of bread in their hands, still warm, as if they needed proof that hunger had been real yesterday. Cersei's voice carried down, sharp and cold. "This man," she announced, "has committed treason. He has accepted enemy supplies. He has spread lies about his queen." A murmur moved through the crowd. Not agreement, not rebellion, just a restless shifting. The word queen had begun to feel uncertain in their mouths. The dockworker lifted his head. Blood ran from his lip. "I ate," he rasped, and his voice cracked the square open with its simplicity. "That's what I did. I ate." Cersei's eyes narrowed. Qyburn leaned in and whispered something. Cersei's mouth curved into a smile that did not reach her eyes. "You ate," she repeated, and there was mockery in it. "You ate the bread of a foreign conqueror. You fed your belly and starved your loyalty." The dockworker's laugh came out like a cough. "Loyalty doesn't fill a child," he said. A woman in the crowd made a sound, half sob, half snarl. Her fingers tightened around her bread crust until it crumbled. Cersei's gaze swept the crowd, searching for faces to punish. "This city is mine," she said. "It will not be bought with sacks of grain and pretty promises." A shout rose from somewhere, rough and angry. "Pretty promises? Like yours?" Gold cloaks shifted. Captain Rennick's head snapped toward the voice. A man near the front pushed forward, emboldened by the crowd's breath. "Where was your promise when my wife died in the September?" he yelled. "Where was your mercy when the green fire came?" Qyburn's eyes sharpened, calculating. Ser Gregor's head tilted slightly, as if listening to the sound of a skull that might soon crack. Cersei's hand tightened on the stone railing. For a moment, Jaime Lannister's voice echoed in her memory. "They can choose." She shoved it away like a weakness. "Silence," she said. The crowd did not go silent. They murmured, louder, a wave building. Names rose and fell like sparks. Marjorie, the September, wildfire, bread, dragon. Cersei's smile thinned. "Hang him," she said. Ser Gregor moved. The rope went over the dockworker's neck. The man's eyes met the crowd, fierce, defiant, terrified. "Eat," he choked out, and then the trapdoor dropped. The man jerked, feet kicking, body swinging. A child in the crowd screamed. A woman covered her mouth. Bread fell into the mud. Cersei watched, expression serene, as if death were a hymn sung in her honor. But the crowd did not cheer. They did not bow. They stared, and in their staring Cersei felt something she hated, judgment. Qyburn murmured, "It will frighten them." Cersei's eyes stayed on the swinging body. "Good," she said. "Fear is loyalty." Captain Rennick's gaze flicked up to the balcony. His face was gray. He looked like a man watching his own future. As the crowd dispersed, their murmurs did not fade. They sharpened. They carried bitterness. They carried the dockworker's last word like a curse. "Eat." And somewhere in the city's veins, men in wet cloth carried wildfire away, laughing quietly at the queen who thought hanging one man could stop hunger from choosing. The sept in Flea Bottom was small and old, its stones cracked and soot-stained from 100 years of cheap candles and poorer prayers. It smelled of wax and damp and bodies pressed too close together. There were no marble floors here, no gilded statues. The seven were carved from simple wood, their faces worn smooth by generations of desperate hands. Septon Emmerich had survived the Great September of Baelor because he had been late. He had cursed himself for it at first. Late, as if lateness were a sin that spared you from death. Now he wore the guilt like a stole. His hair was gone in patches where fire had kissed him. His hands trembled when he held sacred things. Septa Moel had survived because she had been outside, hauling water. She had watched the September bloom green and vanish. She had watched bodies rain down like dark snow. Since then, Her voice had changed. It had become sharper, as if soot had settled on her tongue. They stood at the altar, candles flickering around them, as a hooded man slipped in through the side door and closed it quietly behind him. He did not bow. He did not pray. He carried a satchel that looked too heavy for its size. "No names," he whispered. Septa Moel's eyes narrowed. "Names are all we have," she said. "Names get you killed," the man replied and set the satchel down. Septon Emmerich leaned forward, cautious. "What is this?" The hooded man opened the satchel. Inside were scrolls, letters, accounts, fragments of testimony. One was stained with ash, the edges curled as if it had been pulled from fire. Another bore the seal of the hand of the king from years before. Another, small, damning, was a list of payments to pyromancers with the lion's mark scratched crudely over old ink. Septa Moel sucked in a breath. "Proof," she whispered. Septon Emmerich's fingers hovered over the ash-stained parchment as if afraid it might burn him. This says. "It says the queen committed sacrilege," the hooded man said. "It says she murdered the faithful. Says she paid for it. It says she plans to do it again." Septa Moel's eyes lifted, fierce. "Plans?" The man's voice lowered. "Wildfire," he said. "Caches. Triggers. The city is a tinderbox, and she holds the match." Septon Emmerich's face went white. "The gods! The gods are silent unless you speak for them," Septa Moel snapped, and her voice carried through the sept like a whip. A murmur rose from the gathered smallfolk. People pressed closer, candles trembling in their hands. A woman with a bruised cheek crossed herself. A man with a missing ear spat on the floor in disgust. Septon Emmerich swallowed hard. "If we speak," he said, voice shaking, "she will kill us." Septa Moel leaned close, her face inches from his. "If we don't," she whispered, "she will kill everyone." The hooded man watched them, unreadable. "There is more," he said. He reached into the satchel and withdrew a small object wrapped in cloth. He unwrapped it on the altar. A 7-pointed star, charred at the edges, the metal warped by heat. In its center, a faint green stain clung like sickness. Septa Moel's breath hitched. "From the September," she murmured. Septon Emmerich's eyes filled. "I remember," he whispered. "I remember that star. It hung above the west door. It was found in the rubble," the man said, "along with bones, along with ash, along with silence." His gaze sharpened. "The city is ready to listen now. They are hungry, they are frightened, they have seen bread and hanging. Give them something else to follow besides fear." Septa Moel lifted the charred star with both hands, reverent and furious. "We will speak," she said. Septon Emmerich's throat worked. "We will call for judgment," he whispered, and in the whisper was a seed of courage. Outside, the bells of the Red Keep did not ring. Cersei's city did not announce its sins, but in Flea Bottom, candles burned brighter, and the Faith's voice, wounded, furious, alive, began to rise again. Tyrion's hand cramped halfway through the second paragraph. He flexed his fingers, ink staining the creases like guilt that wouldn't wash off. The candle beside him guttered in the draft, making shadows dance across the stone walls. Outside, Dragonstone's waves battered the cliff like a warning. Olenna stood behind him, watching the letter form as if she could read the truth between the words before they were written. Jon Snow lingered in the doorway with Davos Seaworth, both men silent, both watching as if letters were more dangerous than swords. "You're softening it," Olenna said. Tyrion didn't look up. "I'm trying not to sound like I'm begging." "You are begging," Olenna replied. "You're begging your brother not to let your sister burn a city. That deserves a sharper tone." Tyrion's jaw tightened. Jaime doesn't respond to sharp. He responds to duty, to honor. Olenna snorted. "Honor," she said, and the word dripped contempt. "Honor is what men call their fear of being seen as cowards." Jon's voice came low. "Sometimes it's what keeps them from being monsters." Olenna turned her head slightly. "Is it?" she asked. Tell that to the dead. Jon's gaze held. Tell it to the living, he said. The ones you're trying to save. For a heartbeat, Olenna's expression shifted. Something like respect, reluctant and brief. Then she looked back at Tyrion. Right, she said. But write the truth. Tyrion dipped his quill again. The ink looked black as night. What truth? He muttered. Olenna leaned in, voice quiet enough to feel like a knife sliding between ribs. Write that you know about the wildfire, she said. Write that you know she will burn the city if she feels cornered. Write that if Jaime Lannister does nothing, he will live the rest of his life as the man who watched it happen. Tyrion swallowed. His quill hovered. He already killed one king, Olenna finished. Yes, remind him. Men like Jaime Lannister don't forget the worst thing they've done, even when they pretend it was necessary. Davos shifted, uncomfortable. And if he's loyal? Olenna's eyes flashed. Then he will die with his loyalty wrapped around his throat, she said. But I don't think he is loyal to Cersei. I think he is loyal to his own idea of himself. That can be exploited. Jon's voice sharpened. That's cruel. Olenna's smile was thin. So is wildfire, she said. Pick your cruelty. Tyrion wrote. He wrote of the city, of the children, of the smell of green fire. He wrote of the September and of what Cersei had done to become queen. He wrote of Daenerys Targaryen's promise not to burn the city if it surrendered. He wrote, finally, the sentence Olenna wanted most. If you love her, save her from herself. If you love the city, save it from her. His hand shook as he wrote it. He hated how naked it felt. Olenna watched the words appear and nodded once. Better, she said. Now make it hurt. Tyrion's mouth tightened. You enjoy hurting people. I enjoy results, Olenna replied. Tyrion added a final line, and it felt like swallowing glass. If King's Landing burns, the name you earned once will be yours again. Only this time you will deserve it. He set the quill down and stared at the letter as if it might crawl off the table and betray him. Davos exhaled slowly. That'll do it, he murmured. Jon's face was hard. Or it will push him into her arms. Olenna's gaze was steady. Then he was never going to help, she said. Better to know now. Tyrion melted wax, pressed his seal into it. No lion, no dragon, just the simple mark he used now. A private sign that this was not a command but a confession. He handed it to a runner without looking up, as if eye contact would make him weaker. When the runner left, the room felt emptier. Tyrion rubbed his eyes. And if he ignores it? Olenna's voice softened, just barely. Then we win without him, she said. But if he reads it, truly reads it, then the red keep will begin to crack from the inside. Jon Snow watched the wax seal cool and said nothing, because he understood, in that quiet way, that sometimes the bloodless path required wounds no one could see. Jaime read the letter twice before the meaning stopped shifting under his eyes. The first time, he read it like a soldier reading orders, quick, scanning for threat. The second time, he read it like a man reading a confession, and the words dug in. The chamber was dim, curtains drawn to keep the heat out. Somewhere beyond the walls, the city made its constant noise, shouts, carts, bells, the living grind of a place that did not know how close it was to dying. Jaime sat at a table with his golden hand resting on the parchment. The metal felt cold. It always felt cold. Sometimes he wondered if it would ever feel like part of him instead of a reminder. The letter smelled faintly of salt and candle smoke. Tyrion's scent, in a way, cleverness and exhaustion. Jaime's throat tightened on the line about the name he had earned once. Kingslayer. He had worn it like armor and like chains. He had told himself he did not care. He had pretended, for years, that killing Aerys was the only choice he had ever made that mattered. Now Tyrion was offering him a new choice, and making it clear that doing nothing was also a choice. Jaime's gaze flicked to the chest in the corner, half hidden beneath a cloth. Qyburn had placed it there as if daring him to look. Jaime could see a faint green glow seeping from one crack in the wood, as if the chest were breathing poison. He stood and crossed to it, footsteps quiet. He lifted the cloth. The chest was reinforced with iron bands. The lock was new, Qyburn's handiwork. Jaime did not touch it. He didn't need to. He knew what was inside. He could smell it, almost that strange sharpness like burned herbs and old fear. Behind him, a faint rustle. The curtain shifted. For a heartbeat, Jaime froze, hand half lifted, caught like a child stealing. Cersei's shadow moved on the other side of the curtain, slow, graceful. "What are you doing?" Her voice came soft. Jaime swallowed and forced his hand down. "Looking," he said. The curtain drew back. Cersei entered the chamber like she owned the air. She wore dark red, the color of old blood. Her eyes went immediately to the uncovered chest and then to the letter on the table. "What is that?" she asked, and the softness was gone. Jaime stepped between her and the letter without thinking. "Nothing," he said. Cersei's smile was thin. "Nothing," she repeated, amused. "You've always been a poor liar." She moved closer, and Jaime felt the old pull, the gravity that had kept him orbiting her for years. She smelled of perfume and power. She smelled, faintly, of fear masked as certainty. Her gaze flicked to the letter anyway. "Is that from Tyrion?" she asked. Jaime's jaw tightened. "No." Cersei's eyes sharpened. "Don't insult me," she said. Jaime felt the letter's weight like a stone. "He writes," he said at last. "He thinks he can convince me." "Convince you to betray me?" Cersei corrected, and her voice was almost bored. "Of course he does. He has always believed he's the clever one." Jaime's throat tightened. "He thinks you'll burn the city." Cersei's gaze did not flinch. "He thinks many things," she said. Jaime stared at her. "Will you?" A beat of silence. Then Cersei's mouth curved. "If I must," she said, and the words were so calm they nearly broke him. Jaime's chest tightened. "There are people," he said, and his voice came out rougher than he intended. "Children, families. They didn't. They don't matter," Cersei said, and she said it as if she were explaining something obvious to a slow child. "They are not us." Jaime felt something crack inside him, small and sharp. "That's what Aerys said," he whispered. Cersei's eyes flashed. "Don't compare me to him." Jaime's laugh came out without humor. "Why?" he said. "Because you're prettier?" Cersei's face hardened. "Because I am right," she snapped. "Because I will not kneel to a foreign whore with dragons and call it mercy." Jaime's gaze flicked to the chest again. The green glow seemed brighter now, mocking him. Cersei followed his look and smiled. "It comforts you," she said softly, "to know you can stop a king. You did it once. You think you'll do it again if you must." She stepped closer, voice dropping. "But you won't. Not this time. Because this time it's me." Jaime's stomach lurched. Cersei lifted a hand and touched his cheek, gentle as a lover. "You love me," she murmured, "and love is the only chain that matters." Jaime closed his eyes for a heartbeat, and behind his eyelids he saw green fire blooming through streets, heard children screaming, smelled flesh burning. He saw himself again with a sword in his hand, blood on his armor, the throne room full of whispers. When he opened his eyes, Cersei was watching him, waiting to see which way he would break. Jaime turned back to the table and folded Tyrion's letter. Slow. He slid it into his tunic, close to his heart, as if hiding it there could change what it had already done. "I have duties," he said. Cersei's smile returned, satisfied. "Yes," she said. "You do." Jaime left the chamber with Cersei's perfume clinging to him and Tyrion's words burning through his chest. And he realized with sick clarity that the city was no longer the only thing balanced on a spark. So was he. Yara Greyjoy did not walk like a lady. She walked like a blade drawn from its sheath. Direct, unapologetic, dangerous. When she arrived at Dragonstone's dock, seawater still clinging to her clothes, she looked as if she had wrestled the ocean and won. Olenna met her without ceremony. Old roses and iron salt, face to face. "You smell like ambition," Yara said, eyes flicking over Olenna. "I like it. I smell like survival, Olenna replied. Ambition is what gets young people killed. Yara laughed. It was a rough sound, pleased. Then you'll fit right in. Behind Yara, Theon Greyjoy hovered like a ghost haunting his own body. His eyes stayed on the planks. His hands flexed and relaxed, restless, ashamed. Olenna barely spared him a glance. Shame was its own punishment. She had no time to administer more. They moved to a table under a canvas awning where a map had been pinned down with stones. Lines marked Euron Greyjoy's patrol routes through Blackwater Bay like claws scratching a wound. Yara jabbed a finger at the lines. He's hunting your food ships, she said. He doesn't care about peasants. He cares about humiliating your queen. Olenna's eyes narrowed. And he's good at it, she said. Yara's grin was sharp. He thinks he is, she said. That's his weakness. Olenna tapped the map where two routes intersected near a rocky outcropping. If we keep losing ships, King's Landing starves and Cersei wins, she said. I won't allow it. Yara leaned in, voice low. We can't beat his fleet in open water, she said. Not yet, but we can bleed him. Olenna's smile returned, thin. Not too much, she said. I'm trying to keep this bloodless. Yara snorted. Bloodless is for land wars, she said. The sea always takes its due. Olenna's gaze held. Then take it quietly, she said. No banners. No glorious battle songs. Just inconvenience. Yara's eyes brightened with understanding. We hit his supply, she said. Oil, rope, food for his men. We burn his stores in the night and leave him chasing smoke. Olenna nodded. And while he chases smoke, my ships slip through, she said. Yara's grin widened. I can do that, she said. I've been burning men's pride since I could walk. Theon shifted behind her. He'll kill captives, he muttered, voice tight. That's what he does when he's angry. Yara's eyes flicked back, hard. Let him, she said. Every cruelty he commits makes him less king and more monster. Monsters don't keep followers forever. Olenna's gaze sharpened. Cersei keeps followers, she said. And she's a monster. Yara's smile faded slightly. Then we make the monsters fight each other, she said. Olenna's lips curved. Now you sound like me, she said. They sealed it without ink or wax. Yara called her raiders. Men and women with sea in their eyes and knives on their belts. They loaded barrels of oil not for battle but for fire. Not for glory but for sabotage. As the Ironborn prepared to slip out, Olenna watched them and felt something like grim gratitude. She did not trust Ironborn. She did not trust anyone who smiled too easily at violence. But she trusted their hatred for Euron Greyjoy, and hatred was a reliable currency. Yara paused before boarding her ship. If we succeed, she said, your queen takes the city without burning it? Olenna's gaze went distant, across water toward King's Landing. That's the plan, she said. Yara's grin returned. Then I'll burn his stores twice, she said, and strode onto her ship like a woman walking into legend. Olenna stood on the dock until the Ironborn sails vanished into fog, and she whispered to the sea. Keep them alive long enough to be useful, as if the water could be bribed. By the third night, the tunnels began to feel like a living thing that resented them. The air grew thicker, hotter, as if the city's rot had learned to breathe. The Unsullied moved anyway, shoulders brushing damp brick, boots slipping on slime. They were deep now, beneath streets where nobles slept and whores worked and children begged. Beneath the red keep itself, where the stone was older and the darkness felt heavier. Coro's hands were steady, but he could feel fatigue creeping in like cold. His men had carried jar after jar, each one a heartbeat they could not afford to speed up. Varys' agents guided them through hidden cracks and half-forgotten chambers, faces pale, eyes darting with the knowledge that if they were caught, they would not be forgiven. At a narrow passage, a young agent, too thin, too eager, whispered, "This one is big," and his voice quivered. "It goes under the street of steel." Coro nodded. They followed. The chamber behind the wall was wide, supported by thick arches. Rows of wildfire jars sat stacked like offerings to a cruel god. Ropes threaded among them, leading to clay pots of pitch. The sight made one of the agents gag, hand flying to his mouth. Coro's men spread wet sand. They soaked cloth. They moved with the precision of prayer. One jar slipped. It was small, no larger than a man's head, but it fell with a sound like doom. Glass cracked. A thin line of green light spilled across the floor like a tongue tasting air. Everyone froze. The agent holding the lantern stopped breathing. His eyes were wide, reflecting green. The Unsullied nearest the jar held his hands suspended in the air, afraid to touch, afraid not to. Coro moved first. He dropped to his knees and pressed wet cloth over the crack, smothering the glow. The green light pulsed under the cloth, angry, alive. Coro held it down with both palms, feeling heat seep through, feeling the jar tremble as if it wanted to burst. The agent whispered, barely audible, "We're dead." Coro's voice came out low, steady. "Not yet," he said. Another Unsullied poured wet sand over Coro's hands, covering the cloth, burying the jar's crack under damp weight. Slowly, the green glow dimmed, smothered. The agent's breath came back in a sob. He wiped his face with a shaking hand, leaving a smear of soot. Coro lifted his hands carefully. The cloth stayed pressed down by sand. The jar did not burst. He looked up at the agent, eyes cold. "You do not speak of death in my work," he said. The agent swallowed, nodding frantically. They continued, hour by hour, jar by jar. They dismantled the city's hidden apocalypse. They cut ropes. They removed pitch. They wrapped and carried and passed the jars along like fragile sins. When they could not carry, they buried, sealing caches behind new walls, disguising them with fresh mortar, breaking the triggers so no sudden flame could wake them. In one chamber, they found a symbol scratched into the brick, a crowned stag. Old work. Ares's madness had outlived him, hidden beneath streets that had never asked for it. In another, they found fresh rope and new pitch, Qyburn's recent additions. Evidence that Cersei was not merely inheriting wildfire, she was cultivating it. By dawn, Coro's men emerged through a cellar in a butcher's shop, hauling sacks that stank of meat to hide the sharper scent beneath. The butcher, a Varys man with eyes like a rat, watched them with horror and gratitude intertwined. "How many?" he whispered. Coro's voice was flat. "Enough," he said. The butcher's hands trembled. "Will she still burn us?" Coro paused. He thought of Daenerys Targaryen riding her dragon above the bay, choosing not to burn. He thought of Olenna Tyrell, old and vicious, plotting mercy like a weapon. He thought of the city above them, oblivious. "She will try," Coro said at last, "but the fire will not obey her." The butcher sagged as if a weight had been lifted. He crossed himself not to the seven, but to anything that might listen. Coro and his men vanished into the morning crowd, leaving behind tunnels that still stank and dripped and whispered, but were no longer primed to become the city's funeral pyre. The square near the river filled before the bells could even decide whether to ring. People came with candles. People came with bruises. People came with bread crusts tucked into their pockets as if proof of mercy might protect them from punishment. They pressed together, shoulder to shoulder, faces lifted toward the crude wooden platform where Septon Emmerich stood. He looked smaller than he had in the Sept, surrounded by cracked statues and familiar stink. Here, under open sky with the city watching, he looked like a man being asked to hold back a flood with his bare hands. Septa Moel stood beside him, her face set like stone, the charred seven-pointed star raised above her head. The metal caught the gray light and gleamed, its blackened edges a wound that would not heal. Septon Emmerich's hands trembled as he lifted them. His voice began soft, then grew as the crowd leaned in. "She blew up the house of the gods," he called, and the words struck the air like stones thrown at glass. "She murdered the faithful. She murdered the innocent. She wrapped sacrilege in a crown and called it law." A roar rose from the crowd. Anger, grief, hunger, fear. all braided together. Names shouted. The September Marjorie, the High Sparrow, Green Fire, Hanging, Bread. Septimoel's voice cut through it, sharp. "We demand judgment," she cried. "We demand the queen answer for her sins before the eyes of the gods and the realm." Gold cloaks formed a line at the edge of the square, spears angled, helmets gleaming damply. Captain Rennick stood at the front, sweat streaking down his face despite the cold. His hands tightened on his spear, knuckles white. A sergeant leaned close, whispering, "We should disperse them." Rennick's throat bobbed. He looked at the crowd. He looked at the candles. He looked at the charred star. He looked helplessly at the red keep on the hill, where he knew Cersei watched and judged and chose who would die today to make her point. Septon Emmerich lifted a parchment, one of Varys's gifts. "Here is proof," he shouted. "Here are the payments. Here are the names of pyromancers paid in lion coin. Here is the blasphemy written in ink." The crowd surged, not toward violence but toward belief. People reached up as if they could grab the words and hold them like weapons. Captain Rennick's mouth went dry. If he ordered his men to strike, the square would become blood. If he did not, Cersei would see his hesitation and decide he was expendable. He stood trapped in the narrow space between a queen's wrath and a city's awakening. Then the shadow came. It slid over faces, over candles, over the wooden platform. People gasped and looked up. A child squealed, half fear, half wonder. Drogon glided above the square, massive and silent, wings beating slow. On his back, Daenerys Targaryen sat straight, hair streaming, her face unreadable from below. She did not roar. The dragon did not open his jaws. No flame fell, only the shadow. The crowd fell into a stunned hush, breath held, as if the whole city had become one throat waiting to see whether it would be burned. Daenerys circled once, slow enough for everyone to see her, slow enough for the Red Keep to see her, slow enough for Captain Rennick to feel the weight of the choice hanging over him like the gallows rope he had watched tighten too often. Then Drogon turned, banking away toward the bay, leaving behind only wind and the heavy knowledge that mercy had been chosen. A murmur rose. Not fear this time, but something softer, stranger. "She didn't burn us," someone whispered. "She could have," another voice replied, awed. Septimoel lifted the charred star higher. "The gods have witnessed," she cried. "The realm has witnessed. Let the sinner answer." The crowd's chant began, uneven at first, then gathering strength like a storm building. "Judgment! Judgment!" Captain Rennick's sergeant whispered again, urgent. "Order them to stop." Rennick stared at the chanting faces, at the candles bobbing like stars trapped in hands. He imagined giving the order. He imagined his men shoving spears into bodies. He imagined the city exploding into riot and the Red Keep answering with steel and fire. And he imagined, too, Daenerys Targaryen's shadow passing without flame. Rennick swallowed and said, "Horse, hold!" The sergeant blinked. "Captain, hold!" Rennick repeated, louder, and his voice carried down the line. "No one strikes." His men hesitated, then, one by one, lowered their spears slightly. Up in the Red Keep, Cersei Lannister watched from a window, her face pale with rage so pure it looked almost holy. Qyburn stood behind her, murmuring. Ser Gregor Clegane's helmeted head loomed like death given shape. Cersei's fingers dug into the stone windowsill. She could hear the chant even from here. She could see the candles. She could see the dragon's shadow fading. "They dare," she whispered, and the words trembled, not with fear but with offended disbelief. Below, the city dared anyway. And across the bay, on Dragonstone, Olenna Tyrell received a raven with ink-smudged haste. 2 captains ready. 2 gates can be held when the bells ring. Olenna smiled into the wind and thought, coldly, deliciously, that the Bloodless Coup was no longer a plan. It was a movement. King's Landing had learned a new sound. Candles being lifted in the dark, a hush before a chant. The soft collective intake of breath when a crowd realized it could become more than a crowd. The city had always been loud, but this was different. This was the noise of people discovering their own weight. Captain Rennick walked through the barracks yard with that sound still in his ears, even though the square was half a mile away. His men were pretending to drill. Their spear points dipped and rose without rhythm. Their eyes kept sliding toward the hill where the Red Keep perched like a predator that never slept. A runner in red and gold climbed the steps to the yard and stopped in front of Rennick as if he were delivering a blessing. The boy's cheeks were flushed. His voice cracked when he spoke. "The Queen commands your presence," he said. "Now." Rennick's stomach tightened. He kept his face blank. It was the only skill the City Watch truly taught. How to hide fear so it could not be used against you. He nodded once and handed his spear to a sergeant who looked as if he wanted to swallow his own tongue. As he crossed the city, the streets smelled of bread and wet stone. Women hawked onions. Children ran barefoot, thin legs splashing through puddles like they didn't understand winter could kill. On a corner, a man held up a scrap of parchment and read to a cluster of listeners, voice shaking with fury and awe. "She blew the September," he cried. "The faith says it, and the faith don't lie." Rennick kept walking, head down, cloak pulled high. He could have ordered the man arrested. 2 days ago he would have. Today he didn't even slow. He felt the city watching him, not with deference, but with expectation, as if he were a hinge and they were waiting to see which way he would swing. At the Red Keep's gate, Lannister men checked his seal as if they didn't know his face, as if he were no more than another dog to be kicked. He climbed the hill with the weight of every street clinging to his boots. Inside the walls the air changed. Less sewage, more perfume, less hunger, more cold power. Qyburn met him in a corridor lined with tapestries of long-dead kings. The hand's robe was spotless, his expression mild. He looked like a man who would apologize for stepping on your foot while he cut your throat. "Captain Rennick," Qyburn said, and smiled as if the name were a compliment. "Her Grace is displeased." Rennick bowed. "Her Grace is often displeased," he said before he could stop himself. Qyburn's smile did not move, only his eyes sharpened. "Tread carefully," he murmured. "The city is unsettled. The city is hungry," Rennick said. "Hungry men listen to anyone who offers." "Bread," Qyburn finished softly. He leaned closer, voice a thread. "And sermons, and dragons that pass overhead without fire. Strange times." Rennick felt sweat gather under his helmet. He forced his jaw to stay still. "My men kept the peace," he said. "You kept them from doing their duty," Qyburn corrected. Her Grace heard chants in the square. Chants, as if the city were a council that could vote. Rennick's throat bobbed. "If we had charged, it would have turned into riot." "Perhaps riot is what the city deserves," Qyburn said. "Riots make excellent excuses." He ushered Rennick into the council chamber. Cersei Lannister stood at the window, watching the city like it was something she might crush between 2 fingers. The light from outside painted her hair in pale gold. In the dimness, her face looked carved from marble, beautiful, cold, and incapable of pity. She did not turn when Rennick entered. She spoke to the glass. "They say my people are chanting for judgment," she said. Rennick bowed again, deeper. "Your Grace." Cersei turned then, slowly. Her eyes pinned him. "Do you know what happens to men who allow treason to grow?" His mouth was dry. "They hang," he said. Cersei smiled. "Good," she said. "Then you understand." She stepped forward. "The faith will be silenced. The instigators will be taken. Not tomorrow. Today. Septon Emmerich. Septa Moel. Anyone who carries their words into the streets." Her gaze flicked to his hands, as if imagining a rope around them. "If the gold cloaks will not do it, I will find men who will." Rennick forced himself to meet her eyes. "The city is watching," he said. "If we drag Septons through the mud, then the city learns its place," Cersei snapped. "The city exists to kneel." Qyburn's voice slid in like oil. "There are other measures," he murmured. "Should kneeling fail?" Rennick felt the cold crawl up his spine. Other measures, he echoed, and saw Qyburn's faint satisfaction. He knew, then, that the rumors of wildfire were not rumors. He knew Qyburn had shown her the green jars like a priest showing sacred relics. Cersei watched him recognize it and smiled wider. "Do you see, Captain?" she asked. "Do you see why this ends one way?" Rennick swallowed. "Yes," he said, and hated himself for how weak it sounded. Cersei stepped closer until he could smell her perfume, sharp as crushed flowers. "Then go," she said. "Do your duty. Bring me the faith's leaders. Break the chant, or I will break the city and build it again from the ash." Rennick bowed and left, his legs moving on habit because his mind felt as if it had been scooped hollow. He walked down the hill and felt the city's stink hit him like a slap. Life, real life, the kind that did not belong to queens. In an alley near the Street of Flower, a man stepped out of shadow and blocked his path. Ordinary face, unremarkable cloak. Eyes like someone who had watched people die quietly. "Merrick," Rennick breathed, and the name tasted like both salvation and doom. Merrick did not bow. He did not smile. "She summoned you," he said. "Yes," Rennick whispered. His hand tightened on his spear. "She wants blood. She wants fear," Merrick corrected. "Blood is just the ink she writes it in." Rennick's voice cracked. "If I refuse, she hangs me. If I obey, the city turns on us. Either way." Merrick leaned closer, and his voice became a knife slid into the space between Rennick's ribs. "You have a third way," he whispered. "You do not obey, and you do not rebel. You delay. You misplace men. You search the wrong streets. You protect the Septons by pretending you cannot find them." Rennick stared, eyes wide. "That's treason. That's survival," Merrick said. "Listen carefully. Tonight, Captain. The faith will ring bells at the 3rd hour after sundown. When those bells ring, you will have every man you trust at the river gate and the gate of the gods. Not to fight, to hold." Rennick's breath came fast. "Hold against what?" Marik's eyes flicked toward the hill. "Against her," he said. "Against panic. Against a queen who has forgotten she needs the city more than the city needs her." Rennick's jaw trembled. "And if she orders us to strike anyway?" Marik's gaze did not soften. "Then you remember the dragon shadow," he said. "You remember that mercy was chosen once, and you choose it again, even if it costs you." Rennick swallowed hard. "And if it costs my men?" Marik's voice dropped. "Then your men die saving a city instead of burning it," he said. "There are worse ways to die." Rennick looked down at his spear, at the metal tip that had never felt so heavy. He looked back up at Merrick. "If this is a trap." "It isn't," Merrick said. "Traps are for fools. This is a door opening. Decide whether you walk through." Merrick stepped back into shadow and vanished as if he had never existed. Rennick stood alone in the alley with the city's noise pressing in, and he realized his fear had changed shape. It was no longer fear of Cersei Lannister. It was fear of what he would become if he kept obeying her. On Dragonstone, the wind carried ravens like thrown knives. They arrived at odd hours, their black wings beating against the cold air as if the messages they carried had weight enough to drag them down. Olenna Tyrell sat at the long table in a chamber that smelled of salt and parchment. The map of Westeros lay beneath her fingers like a scar. Tyrion Lannister paced. He had worn a groove in the stone floor with his worry. Daenerys Targaryen stood at the window, watching the distant smoke of King's Landing blur the horizon, as if she could read the city's mood in the way the air shimmered above it. Missandei brought the latest raven. Grey Worm took it first, because he was always closer to Daenerys than anyone else, even when he stood a pace away. He handed it to Tyrion without expression. Tyrion broke the seal with hands that were steady only because he had learned to fake steadiness. He read, and his face tightened. Then he handed the parchment to Olenna. Olenna read without blinking, her mouth curved, small and sharp. "He's in," she said. Daenerys turned. "Who?" Olenna tapped the parchment. "Captain Rennick," she said. "He was summoned to the Red Keep." He came back breathing. She folded the raven's message neatly. And now he is afraid enough to be useful. Tyrion rubbed his forehead. If he's discovered, then he dies, Olenna said. And he'll die either way. Better to die doing something that matters. Daenerys's eyes narrowed. You speak of death too easily. Olenna looked at her. I speak of it because it's always in the room, she said. You just prefer not to see it. Daenerys's jaw flexed. What is the next move? She asked, voice clipped. Olenna slid her finger across the map to King's Landing's gates. We synchronize, she said. The faith will ring bells. Not for war, for judgment. When those bells ring, the city will gather. The gold cloaks will be forced to choose whether they keep peace or keep Cersei. Tyrion's voice came quiet. And while the city gathers, Olenna echoed. Grey Worm's men enter, not as conquerors, as peacekeepers. Grey Worm's eyes remained fixed on Daenerys. My men will not harm the smallfolk, he said. It was not a promise. It was a vow. Daenerys's gaze flicked to him, then back to Olenna. Through which gate? Olenna's finger pressed the river gate. Here, she said. And if the river gate fails, the gate of the gods. 2 hinges, 1 door. Tyrion swallowed. If Cersei sees Unsullied in the streets, she'll call it invasion. She'll call anything invasion, Olenna said. She called bread treason. She leaned closer to Daenerys. The key is speed and restraint. The Unsullied secure the armories first, the granaries second, the wildfire points third. You take away the tools of massacre before she can order one. Daenerys's hands tightened on the window frame. And me? She asked. Olenna watched her, knowing the question was really, where do I put my rage? Where do I put the dragon in me? You are seen, Olenna said. You are not used. Daenerys's eyes flashed. I won't hide. No, Olenna agreed. You will fly, once, when the bells ring, low enough for the city to feel the wind of your wings, high enough that you look like a promise, not a threat. Tyrion's mouth twisted. A dragon's shadow is always a threat. Olenna's gaze cut to him. Then let it be a threat of restraint, she said. Let it say, I can end you. I choose not to. That is what terrifies tyrants most. Jon Snow entered then, cloak damp from sea spray, Davos Seaworth behind him. Jon's eyes swept the room, taking in the tension like a soldier taking stock of a battlefield. You're moving tonight, Jon said. It wasn't a question. Daenerys faced him. We're preventing a massacre, she said. Jon's gaze went to Olenna. And you think this stops Cersei from burning the city? Olenna met his eyes without flinching. I think it removes her match, she said. And if she tries to burn it anyway, she will do so with her own hands in front of her own people. Jon's jaw tightened. People still die, he said. Yes, Olenna said, but not by the tens of thousands. She leaned back, tired bones complaining. There is no bloodless war. There are only wars where the blood is spilled quietly in corners instead of poured like wine in the streets. Daenerys's voice went low. No dragons in the city, she said, as if carving the rule into the stone itself. Olenna's mouth curved. Good, she said, and no speeches that make it sound like you're asking permission. She pointed again to the gates. When the bells ring, you are not a guest. You are the queen who has arrived with bread, not fire. Tyrion exhaled. If this works, he murmured, it changes everything. Olenna's eyes glittered. That is the point, she said. We are not taking a throne. We are taking a story. Daenerys stared at the map, then at the window, then at the sea, where the city lay like a bruise on the horizon. Tonight, she said at last. Grey Worm bowed his head, already moving in his mind through streets he had never walked. Missandei's hands clasped together, quiet as prayer. Olenna reached for the rose ring on her finger, pressed it once, hard, until the thorned pattern bit her skin. Pain was a reminder that this was real. Send word, Olenna said. Tell Captain Rennick to hold." And the ravens flew, sharp and dark, carrying a queen's restraint and an old woman's vengeance toward a city that had begun to remember it could refuse. Euron Greyjoy heard bad news the way other men heard music, as an invitation to violence. The messenger was still panting when he reached the deck of silence. Sea spray clung to his beard. His eyes were wide, whites showing like a frightened horse's. "Speak," Euron said, lounging against the rail as if the sea belonged to him. His cloak snapped in the wind. The gold crown perched on his head looked more like a joke than a symbol, but Euron never laughed at himself. He only laughed at others. "The stores," the messenger choked out. "At Driftmark's outer anchorage, oil, rope, salted meat. There."
Euron's smile sharpened.
"They're what?" "Gone," the messenger whispered. "Burned. In the night. No banners. No signal. Just fire." For a heartbeat, the sea seemed to go quiet, as if even the waves were waiting to see whether Euron would explode. Then he laughed. It was a bright, ugly sound. "Burned," he repeated, delighted. "Someone has grown a spine." His eyes glittered. "My sweet niece, or perhaps one of your dragon queen's pets." He leaned forward suddenly, grabbing the messenger by the chin hard enough to make the man whimper. "Did you see her? Did you see who did it?" The messenger shook his head frantically. "No, your grace. They were gone before dawn. Only ash. Only." Euron released him with a shove. The man stumbled, nearly falling on the slick deck. Euron turned to his crew, his grin widening as if this were entertainment rather than inconvenience. "They're trying to starve us," he called. "They think if my men go hungry, my ships go slow." He spread his arms, embracing the wind. "Let them try." But the truth crawled beneath his bravado like a worm. Hunger made men mutter. Hunger made captains question. Hunger made the sea less obedient because the hands that pulled the rope grew weaker. Euron's first mate, a scarred man with teeth filed into points, stepped closer. "We can take a merchant port," he suggested. "Raid. Resupply." Euron's eyes slid to him, amused. "Of course we can," he said. "We can take anything." His voice sharpened. "But what I want is not food." The first mate swallowed. "What then?" Euron's gaze lifted toward the horizon where Blackwater Bay lay, the water dark as old blood. "I want her ships," he said. "The little mercy boats. I want to sink them where the peasants can watch. I want them to taste salt water instead of bread and remember who owns the sea." A cheer rose from some of his men. Men who loved cruelty because it made them feel powerful. Others stayed quiet, eyes flicking toward the missing stores, thinking of empty stomachs. Euron saw the hesitation and smiled again. He liked fear. He liked doubts because they gave him something to crush. "Ready the fleet," he barked. "We sail hard. We find her ships. We make a lesson." They moved, but the sea had changed around them. Smoke rose in a faint smear far behind. Yara Greyjoy's handiwork, a wound in the night that still bled ash. Euron's ships cut through the water, but their speed was the speed of a beast missing teeth. At dusk, a second messenger arrived, this one with soot on his face and panic in his voice. "More stores," he gasped. "At Stone Dance. Burned. And 2 captains." Euron's hand closed around the man's throat. "Captains what?" he hissed. "Missing," the man choked. "Gone with their ships. They." Euron squeezed until the messenger's eyes bulged and his hands clawed at Euron's wrist. Then Euron released him and let him collapse, coughing on the deck like a fish dragged from water.
"Cowards," Euron spat.
"They think running saves them." He wiped his hand on the messenger's tunic as if cleaning dirt. "No one outruns me." He stalked to the prow and stared out at the darkening sea. Somewhere ahead, the Mercy ships moved under cover of fog, sliding sacks of grain into King's Landing's hungry hands. Somewhere ahead, his fleet was supposed to be the knife that cut that corridor. But a knife without a handle cut the hand that held it. Euron felt the irritation like a splinter under his skin. He wanted blood, and the world was offering him smoke. "Find her," he growled to the wind. "Find the bitch who thinks she can steal from me." Far away, on a small black ship with no banners, Yara Greyjoy watched a distant orange glow fade on the horizon and smiled with teeth bared. She did not need to sink Euron's fleet. She only needed to make it late, and lateness in war was sometimes the same thing as defeat. Qyburn discovered the absence the way a surgeon discovered rot, by noticing what was missing where something should have been. He stood in a vaulted cellar beneath a ruined guild hall, torchlight trembling in the damp air. The walls were lined with niches where jars had once sat, each niche shaped to cradle glass like a womb. Some niches still held their contents, green light pulsing faintly as if the wildfire were breathing. But too many were empty. Too many were clean, as if the jars had been removed with care, not stolen in haste. Qyburn's mouth did not change. His eyes did. "Count again," he murmured to the pyromancer kneeling in front of him. The pyromancer was an old man, beard singed, hands stained with chemicals. He shook as if the cold had seeped into his bones. There were 37, he whispered. "I swear it. 37 in this vault alone." "And now?" Qyburn asked softly. The pyromancer swallowed. 21, he said, voice breaking. 21. Qyburn nodded as if receiving a simple report on the weather. He stepped closer to an empty niche and ran a finger along the stone. The dust pattern was disturbed. Something heavy had been lifted away. There were faint marks where wet cloth had rubbed careful hands, deliberate. "Who has keys?" Qyburn asked. The pyromancer's eyes darted. Only the guildmasters. Only the queen's men. Only those who think they are safe," Qyburn finished. He turned. Two of his assistants stood behind him, pale and eager, men who believed loyalty could protect them. Qyburn looked at them as if considering whether they were worth keeping. "Bring the ledger," he said. One assistant hurried away and returned with a book bound in cracked leather. Qyburn opened it and scanned the entries, lists of jars, caches, triggers, routes, names of streets, names of cellars, places where the city's death had been hidden like treasure. His finger paused on a set of recent entries. The ink was fresh. The numbers did not match the empty niches. Qyburn closed the ledger slowly. He looked at the pyromancer. "You lied," he said. The pyromancer's eyes widened. "No," he pleaded.
"No, Isuya."
Qyburn lifted a hand, and one of the guards stepped forward. The guard's gauntlet closed around the pyromancer's hair and yanked his head back, baring his throat like an offering. "I do not enjoy this," Qyburn murmured, voice gentle. "People always assume I do. They confuse necessity with pleasure." He leaned closer to the pyromancer's ear. "Tell me who has been in these vaults." The pyromancer sobbed. "No one," he whispered. "No one but us. No one but..." A faint tremor ran through the floor as if the city above had shifted. Qyburn's eyes narrowed. He smelled something damp, chemical, the faint metallic tang of wildfire. He also smelled fear, and fear lied more often than truth. He straightened. "Then the city has rats in its walls," he said. "Clever rats." He nodded once. The guard's blade flashed. The pyromancer's plea cut off in a wet gurgle. Blood spilled onto the stones, dark and ordinary. It looked obscene next to the green glow of the remaining jars. Qyburn watched the body slump and did not blink. "Dispose of him," he said, quietly, "and find the others. Guildmasters, apprentices, anyone who has ever breathed in these tunnels." One assistant swallowed hard. "My lord, what if it's the City Watch?" Qyburn's gaze slid to him, mild as ever. "Then the City Watch will learn the cost of disobedience," he said. "If it is the Dragon Queen's men," his voice softened, "then we are closer to the end than her grace realizes." He left the cellar and climbed into the city's stale air. King's Landing streets buzzed with talk of bread and bells. Qyburn heard it as background noise, the way a man heard insects before a storm. In the Red Keep, he found Cersei in her solar, staring down at the city with a wine cup untouched in her hand. Ser Gregor Clegane stood behind her like a shadow given armor. Jaime Lannister was not there. That absence mattered too. Qyburn bowed. "Your Grace," he said, "we have a problem." Cersei's eyes did not leave the city. "Everything is a problem," she replied. "Speak." "The wildfire," Qyburn said. Her gaze flicked, sharp. "What of it?" "Some caches have been removed," he said carefully. Cersei turned then, and the anger in her eyes was immediate, violent. "Removed," she repeated. "By whom?" "That is what I am discovering," Qyburn said. "But the removal was careful, deliberate, not theft by drunkards." Cersei's mouth tightened. "So they're inside my city," she said. "Yes," Qyburn murmured. "And if they can reach the wildfire, they can reach other things." Cersei's hand tightened around her cup until her knuckles whitened. "Then we move what remains," she said. "We bring it here, into the Red Keep, where no rat can crawl." Qyburn hesitated. "Bringing it closer." "Do it," Cersei snapped. "And if the faith rings bells again, I want the sound drowned in screams." Qyburn bowed, but his mind was already racing through tunnels and names and empty niches. He could feel the web tightening around them, though he did not yet know who held the other end. As he left, he passed a corridor where a servant stood with her head down, carrying linens. Qyburn's eyes flicked over her briefly, dismissive. He did not notice the faint damp stain on the linens, an impression of wet cloth, the kind used to smother wildfire, nor the way the servant's hands were too steady for a servant who had just walked past death. The city's rats, it seemed, wore human faces now. Jaime Lannister went into the city the way a man went into a graveyard. Quietly, hood pulled low, expecting ghosts. He left the Red Keep at dusk under the excuse of inspection. A Kingsguard's duties were wide enough to hide almost anything. He took 2 men with him because refusing an escort would have drawn questions, and questions were knives. The men followed at a respectful distance, armor clinking softly, eyes scanning for threats that did not look like hunger. King's Landing smelled different since the bread began to arrive. The stink of sewage was still there. The rot was still there. But beneath it there was warmth, yeast, smoke, salt fish. The smell of a city being fed, even if the feeding was a trick or a mercy or both. Jaime walked through a market where women argued over prices like it mattered. He saw a boy holding a crust of bread as if it were treasure, licking at it slowly, savoring. He saw an old man with a scar down his face whispering to a group of listeners, his voice urgent. "She flew over us," the old man said. "She could have roasted the lot, but she didn't. You hear me? She didn't." A woman spat. "Mercy is a mask," she muttered. "All queens want is power." Another man replied. "But Cersei wants power and ash." Jaime's stomach twisted. He kept walking, boots moving through mud that clung like accusation. He remembered the last time he'd walked these streets with purpose, sword at his side, and believed the city's suffering was simply the cost of order. Now the cost felt personal, as if the mud were sticking to his soul. At a crossroads, he saw a cluster of gold cloaks standing near a set steps. They were not breaking heads. They were not dragging anyone away. They were watching, uneasy, while Septimoel spoke to a small crowd with a voice like flint striking stone. "The gods do not forget," she cried. "The city does not forget." A gold-cloaked sergeant muttered, "Captain says hold. Captain says hold." Jaime felt the phrase echo. Hold, not strike, not obey blindly. Hold. His escort shifted, impatient. "Sir Jaime," one of them said, "we should return before it's fully dark." Jaime nodded as if he agreed. "A moment," he said. He stepped into an alley and leaned against a wall slick with damp. He pulled Tyrion's letter from inside his tunic and read it again in the thin light. The words were the same, but they hit differently here, with the city's sounds pressing in. "If King's Landing burns," he closed his eyes and saw green fire again. Not in memory, but in imagination, Cersei's imagination. Qyburn's careful hands, jars hidden beneath children's beds and market stalls like buried curses. He opened his eyes and realized he could not go back to pretending. Not now that the city had begun to stir. Not now that he had seen bread in a child's hand and hope in a woman's whisper. A figure moved at the end of the alley. Jaime's hand went to his sword before his mind caught up. He had lived too long in danger to wait for clarity. The figure stepped closer and stopped where the light from the street cut across his face. Ordinary, forgettable, a man who could disappear by walking into any crowd.
Marek.
Jaime did not know his name, but he recognized the type. He had met men like this in war councils, in back corridors, in places where power made deals with itself. "Sir Jaime Lannister," the man said, voice low. "Or do you prefer Kingslayer?" Jaime's jaw tightened. "Who are you?" "A man who wants the city to live," Merrick replied. "A man who knows you once made the same choice." Jaime's eyes narrowed. "If you're here to threaten me, I'm here to offer you a door," Merrick said. "Your brother wrote to you." Jaime's throat tightened. "You've read it." Marek's mouth barely moved. "Not all of it," he said. "Only enough to know you are standing on the edge of something, and men on edges either step forward or get pushed." Jaime's golden hand flexed. "Speak plainly."
Marek leaned closer.
"Tonight," he said, "the faith rings bells. The gold cloaks hesitate. Grey Worm's men enter through a gate held open by captains who are tired of being Cersei's knives. If the Red Keep responds with wildfire, the city dies." Jaime's breath went shallow. "And what do you want from me?" Marek's eyes held his. "To keep the Red Keep from lighting the match," he said. Jaime laughed softly, humorless. "You think I can stop her with words?" "No," Merrick said. "I think you can stop her with access, with keys, with the authority of the Kingsguard to move through her halls without question." His gaze sharpened. "Qyburn is moving what remains of the wildfire into the keep. If he succeeds, the match will be in Cersei's hand, not hidden in tunnels. That makes it easier to burn." Jaime felt cold spread through him. "Then I stop Qyburn," he said, and the words surprised him with how certain they sounded.
Marek nodded.
"Good," he said. "And one more thing." Jaime's eyes narrowed. "What?" Marek's voice dropped. "When the bells ring, the city will look to the Red Keep," he said. "If the Kingsguard stands with the people, the gold cloaks will follow. If the Kingsguard stands with Cersei, the city will bleed." Jaime's stomach twisted. "The Kingsguard stands with the crown," he said automatically, the old line, the old lie. "The Kingsguard stands with the realm," Merrick corrected. "Or it should." Jaime stared at him, and for a heartbeat he saw Tyrion's face in Marek's. Clever, weary, demanding honesty. Merrick stepped back. "I will not meet you again," he said. "If you choose wrong, you won't need warnings. You'll only need a grave." He vanished into the street as quietly as smoke. Jaime stood in the alley and listened to the city's hum. Candles being lit, voices gathering, a distant bell being tested. He turned and walked back toward the Red Keep with Tyrion's letter burning against his chest and a new decision settling into him like armor. If Cersei tried to burn the city, he wow. LD stop her, and this time no one would ever call him a hero for it. The bells began as a tremor in the air, uncertain, as if the septs themselves were afraid of what they were about to declare. One bell, then another, then a third, voices rising from stone towers across the city, calling people out of their houses and into the streets like a summons from the gods. Septon Emmerich walked up the Red Keep's hill with his hands shaking so badly, he had to clasp them together to hide it. Septa Moel walked beside him like a blade held upright. The charred seven-pointed star was wrapped in cloth and tucked close to her chest. Behind them, a small procession of Septons and Septas followed, faces pale, eyes bright with fear and fury. Gold cloaks surrounded them. Not as prisoners, not as guards, but as escorts. Captain Rennick marched at the front, helmet on, face set hard. His men watched the Red Keep's gates with the wary eyes of dogs approaching a lion's den. At the gate, Lannister soldiers barred their path. Spears crossed. State your business. A sergeant barked, spittle flying. Septa Moel stepped forward. We bring a summons, she said, voice ringing. For Cersei Lannister to answer for sacrilege, murder, and blasphemy before the gods and the realm. The sergeant laughed, sharp and nervous. You bring a summons for the queen, he repeated, as if savoring the absurdity. And you think? A deep, heavy footstep echoed behind him. Ser Gregor Clegane appeared in the gate's shadow, armor black, helm shaped like a snarling beast. He did not speak. He did not need to. The presence of him was a statement. We do not negotiate. We crush. The Septons flinched. Even Captain Rennick's men shifted, hands tightening on their spears. Fear rippled through the line like a cold wind. Septa Moel lifted her chin. The gods are watching, she said, and her voice did not shake. And so is the city. Captain Rennick stepped forward, spear grounded. Open the gate, he said to the sergeant. They are under my protection. The sergeant stared at him as if he'd gone mad. Under your... Captain, do you understand who? I understand, Rennick said, and his voice carried a hardness born of desperation. Open the gate. The sergeant hesitated. Then he stepped aside, unwilling to be the first man to trigger whatever violence might follow. The gate creaked open. They entered the courtyard of the Red Keep, and the air felt colder, cleaner, as if the keep tried to pretend it was separate from the city's filth. Cersei's banners hung like blood-stained flags. Lannister soldiers lined the walls, watching. The mountain stood near the steps like an execution waiting for a name. Cersei descended those steps slowly, Qyburn at her side, Jaime Lannister absent. Her eyes swept over the Septons and the gold cloaks with the disdain of a woman inspecting livestock. What is this? She asked, voice smooth. Septon Emmerich stepped forward, parchment trembling in his hands. Your Grace, he began, and his voice nearly broke under the weight of the words. We come in the name of the faith, in the name of the gods and the realm. We, Cersei cut him off with a laugh. You come in the name of whomever pays you, she said. Do you think I cannot smell treason? Septa Moel stepped forward and unwrapped the charred star, lifting it high. The metal caught the torchlight, blackened edges gleaming. A murmur ran through the courtyard. Lannister men shifting, gold cloaks stiffening. This is what you did, Septa Moel said, voice sharp as broken glass. You burned the god's house. You murdered the faithful. You drenched the city in green fire and called it justice. Cersei's eyes narrowed. Enough, she said softly, and the softness carried threat. She looked at Captain Rennick. Captain, she said, arrest them. Rennick's throat bobbed. His men tensed behind him. He could feel 100 eyes on his back. Lannister soldiers waiting for obedience, Septons waiting for protection, the city's distant bells waiting for an answer. He swallowed and said, Horse? No. The word landed in the courtyard like a stone dropped into still water. Silence rippled outward. Cersei's smile did not move. No, she repeated. Is that what you said? Rennick's hands tightened on his spear. They are unarmed, he said. They are faith. If we seize them here, we spill blood in the Red Keep's yard. The city will riot. Let it riot, Cersei hissed. I will drown it. Qyburn leaned close to her ear, murmuring. Cersei's eyes glittered. She lifted her hand slightly. Ser Gregor Clegane moved. He stepped toward the Septons with the slow inevitability of death. A Septa whimpered. Septon Emmerich's parchment fluttered as his hands shook. Captain Rennick stepped between them, spear lifted. His men followed, forming a line, spear points aimed at the mountain's chest. The sight was absurd. Thin men with spears facing a legend in black armor, but absurdity was sometimes the only shield left. Stand aside, Cersei snipped. You will not defy me in my own yard. Rennick's voice cracked, but he forced it steady. I will keep the peace, he said. I will not commit sacrilege. Cersei's eyes went cold. You are nothing, she whispered. A man with a cloak and delusions. Rennick met her gaze. "Then kill me," he said, and the words came out like a surrender and a challenge at once. "But you will do it in front of them, in front of the city's bells, and they will remember." For a heartbeat, Cersei hesitated, not from fear of Rennick, but from fear of what his death would look like, from fear of spectacle she could not control. Her gaze flicked upward. A shadow crossed the courtyard. Drogon's wind rolled over the Red Keep, snapping banners, scattering loose ash from torches. Heads tilted back. Lannister soldiers muttered, some stepping back instinctively. The mountain did not move, but even his stillness felt taut. Daenerys Targaryen passed overhead, silent, no flame, no roar, only presence. The bells below continued to ring like a heartbeat. Cersei's face twisted, fury staining it. She looked at Captain Rennick and saw, for the first time, that he was not alone. The city's sound was behind him. The dragon's shadow was above him. And somewhere, she realized, her own walls were beginning to betray her. "Get out!" Cersei snapped, voice sharp enough to cut. "Get out of my keep." Captain Rennick did not move until the Septons began to back away, clutching the charred star like a weapon. When they turned and walked out through the gate, gold cloaks flanking them, the courtyard's silence broke into whispers. Fear, disbelief, something like hope. Cersei stared after them, fingers digging into her palms. Qyburn's voice whispered at her side, urgent. "They have dared," Cersei hissed. And in the city below, the bells answered, steady and relentless, as if daring were the only language left. Night in King's Landing was never truly dark. Fires burned in braziers. Lanterns swayed above alleyways. The Red Keep's windows glowed like watchful eyes. But on this night, the light had a different quality. Candles multiplied in windows, on steps, in hands. The city looked, from above, like a field of stars refusing to go out. Captain Rennick stood at the river gate with his helmet under his arm, damp hair plastered to his forehead. The bells had not stopped. The sound made his teeth ache. His men held the gate's mechanism, hands on chains and levers. Their spears were grounded, points down, as if they were making a vow to the street itself. A sergeant approached, voice low. "We're seen," he whispered. "Lannister men on the wall. They're watching us." Rennick's throat bobbed. "Let them," he said. "We hold." From the darkness beyond the gate came a soft signal. 2 clicks, like stones struck together. Rennick's heart kicked. He lifted his hand once, a single gesture. The chains moved. The portcullis rose with a grinding groan that made men flinch. The gate opened just wide enough for shadows to slip through. Unsullied entered the city as if they were part of the night. No shouts, no battle cries, no banners. They moved in disciplined lines, cloaks dark, helmets dull. Their spears were held low, not aimed at the crowd but at the air, ready for any threat that tried to become real. Grey Worm walked at their head. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp enough to cut. He paused at the threshold and looked at Rennick. "You did this," Grey Worm said. It was not praise. It was recognition. Rennick's voice came out rough. "Keep it clean," he whispered. "If blood spills, the city burns." Grey Worm nodded once. "No blood," he said. "Only order." The Unsullied flowed into the streets, and Rennick felt the city exhale. Small folk watched from doorways, candles trembling. Some crossed themselves. Some whispered. No one threw stones. No one screamed. They had expected fire. Instead, they got silent men with spears who did not strike. Grey Worm's first target was the armory near Fishmonger's Square. It was a squat stone building that smelled of oil and metal. 2 gold cloaks stood outside, tense. When they saw Grey Worm, their hands tightened on their spears, and fear flashed across their faces. Captain Hollis stepped out from the shadows beside them. His eyes flicked to Grey Worm, then to the men. "Open it," he said. "Now." One of the guards swallowed. "Captain, the Queen." "The Queen isn't here," Hollis snapped. "Open it." The door swung inward. Unsullied entered and took control with the efficiency of men who had trained their whole lives for moments like this. They did not steal weapons. They did not arm the crowd. They simply removed the armory's power from Cersei's reach. Locking racks, sealing powder, placing their own men at every entrance. In the granaries by the Street of Flower, Grey Worm did the same. Food was guarded now not by Lannister soldiers, but by men who did not eat until commanded. The city's most dangerous resource shifted hands without a single sword drawn. A Lannister patrol encountered an Unsullied line near Cobbler's Square. The patrol's leader, a young knight with more pride than sense, drew his sword and shouted, "By order of the Queen!" Grey Worm stepped forward. His voice was calm. "Put it down," he said. The knight sneered. "Foreign eunuch." He spat and swung. Grey Worm's spear moved like a thought. The spear point flicked, not into the man's chest, but into his sword arm, pinning it against his own body. The knight screamed and dropped his blade. Two Unsullied stepped forward and disarmed him, twisting him to the ground with brutal efficiency that avoided death by inches. The patrol froze, eyes wide, seeing that the Unsullied could kill them but had chosen not to. Fear shifted into something else, hesitation. Hesitation became retreat. "Go," Grey Worm said, and his voice carried the weight of command. "Tell them the city is being kept." The patrol stumbled away, dragging their wounded leader. No one pursued. In Flea Bottom, children followed the Unsullied at a distance, whispering. "They don't hit," one boy said, astonished. "They don't even shout." An old woman clutched a candle and murmured, "The Dragon Queen sent quiet men." Above it all, Drogon's shadow passed once, slow and deliberate. Daenerys Targaryen did not land. She did not burn. She watched the city shift under her like a tide turning. Near midnight, a messenger reached Grey Worm with a folded note. Grey Worm read it once and handed it to Hollis. Hollis's face tightened. "Qyburn's moving something into the keep," he muttered. "Crates. Guarded." Grey Worm's eyes went colder. "Wildfire," he said. Hollis swallowed. "If we stop them, blood spills," he whispered. Grey Worm stared at the note, then looked up at the candlelit windows, at the faces peering out, at the city waiting to see whether this was salvation or another lie. "No blood," he said again, softer, as if reminding himself. "We cut the rope, not the throat." He turned and gestured. Unsullied shifted, forming new lines, moving toward the Red Keep's supply gate with the silent speed of men who had been trained to be weapons but were now being asked to be walls. Captain Rennick stood at the river gate and listened to the city's bells. For the first time in his life, he felt as if the sound belonged to him too. And somewhere high above, in the Red Keep's cold halls, a queen began to realize that the streets were no longer hers to command. Jaime Lannister found Qyburn in a corridor beneath the Queen's solar, where the walls sweated cold and the air smelled of chemicals. Servants hurried past carrying crates, faces down, moving too fast for a castle that usually moved at a queen's pace. Jaime stepped into their path and lifted a hand. "Stop," he said. The servants froze, eyes darting. Behind them, two guards in Lannister colors tightened their grip on their spears. Qyburn emerged from the doorway behind the crates, calm as ever. "Ser Jaime," he said softly, "you're out late." Jaime's gaze went to the crates. "What's in them?" he asked. "Supplies," Qyburn replied. His smile was mild. "The city is unstable. Her Grace prefers certain things kept close." Jaime's throat tightened. "Wildfire," he said. The guards shifted, uneasy. One servant made a small sound, a whimper he tried to swallow. Qyburn's eyes did not blink. "A prudent precaution," he murmured. "The Queen does not intend to be surprised." Jaime stepped closer until his shadow fell over the nearest crate. He could see damp stains on the wood, as if it had been wrapped in wet cloth. He could smell the faint, wrong sharpness beneath the tar and pine. He remembered the Mad King's breath, hot and frantic, whispering burn them all like a prayer. "No," Jaime said, and the word came out like steel. Qyburn's head tilted slightly. "No, he echoed, as if amused by the concept. Jaime's hand went to his sword. You are not bringing this into the keep, he said. Qyburn's voice stayed gentle. Ser Jaime, you are sworn to protect the queen. This protects her. It kills the city, Jaime snapped. The city is already turning on her, Qyburn replied. Do you think those bells ring for justice? They ring for blood. Jaime stared at him. You're afraid, he said. Qyburn's smile twitched. I am cautious, he corrected. Fear is for men who cannot calculate. Jaime stepped past him and placed his golden hand on the crate's lid. The wood was cool. He could feel, through metal, the faint vibration of glass within. His stomach clenched. Move them back, he said to the servants, voice hard. Out of the keep. Now. The servants looked at Qyburn, pleading for direction. Qyburn's eyes sharpened slightly, and for the first time Jaime saw irritation ripple through the man's calm. You overstep, Qyburn said softly. Jaime laughed once, bitter. I've been overstepping for years, he said. He leaned in, voice low. Tell Cersei. Tell her I said no. Qyburn's gaze held his. If you defy her now, he murmured, you will not like the consequences. Jaime's mouth tightened. Neither will she, he said. A distant roar echoed through the keep. Steel on steel, men shouting. It was muffled, as if the castle's stone tried to swallow it, but it was real. Jaime felt the keep's heart stutter. The city's invasion had begun, not with fire, but with quiet men taking corners and doors. Qyburn's eyes flicked toward the sound. For the first time, his composure cracked. A flicker of alarm. They're inside, he whispered. Jaime nodded. Yes, he said, and they're not killing anyone. His gaze sharpened. So don't give them a reason. Qyburn's mouth tightened. Her grace will not accept. A booted step approached fast. Captain Rennick appeared at the end of the corridor with a dozen gold cloaks behind him. Helmets on, faces pale. Behind them, in the torchlight, Unsullied stood like a dark tide held back by discipline. Rennick's eyes locked on Jaime. Ser Jaime, he said, voice hoarse. The city is being secured. By order of... He faltered because the order was not from Cersei anymore, and saying that out loud felt like sacrilege. Jaime looked past him at the Unsullied, then back at Qyburn. You see? He said quietly, the door has opened. You can either walk through or be crushed in it. Qyburn's gaze flicked to the crates, to the servants, to the approaching spears. He measured like a man counting organs. Seize them, he suddenly snapped to the guards. Arrest the captain. Arrest. He did not finish. Jaime's sword was out, the blade pressing against Qyburn's throat. The steel did not cut yet, but it made the room freeze. Jaime's golden hand closed around Qyburn's robe, dragging him close enough that Jaime could smell the man's clean soap and the cold sweat beneath it. Say another word, Jaime murmured, and his voice was quieter than any threat he had ever made. And I will put you on the floor. Qyburn's breath hitched. His eyes, usually so mild, flared with something like hatred. Rennick swallowed hard. Ser Jaime. Jaime did not look away from Qyburn. Lock him, he said. Take his keys. Rennick hesitated only a heartbeat, then stepped forward. 2 gold cloaks moved in, hands shaking as they reached for the hand of the queen. Qyburn's face twisted in disgust as rough fingers grabbed him. His calm collapsed into cold fury. This is treason, Qyburn hissed. This is prevention, Jaime replied. The servants stared, frozen. Jaime turned to them, voice sharp. Move the crates, he barked. Back, out of the keep. They obeyed, frantic, hands slipping on damp wood as they hauled the wildfire away from the queen's halls. The smell retreated slightly, but Jaime still felt it in his nose like a stain. As Qyburn was dragged away, he leaned close to Jaime, voice a thread. She will burn you, he whispered. She will burn everything you love. Jaime's jaw tightened. Then she will burn alone, he said. Behind him, the keep's noise grew louder. Doors being barred, patrols being redirected. the quiet takeover turning into a tightening grip. Jaime stood in the corridor with his sword still drawn and felt, for the first time in years, that his oath might mean something other than obedience. It might mean choosing the city over the queen. Cersei Lannister retreated into the map room like a wounded animal retreating into its den. The carved table of Westeros lay beneath torchlight, familiar and comforting in its false certainty. On the map, armies could be moved with fingertips. In reality, they moved with blood. She stood over King's Landing's outline, nails digging into the carved streets. Outside the room, the castle's corridors echoed with footsteps that did not belong. Gold cloaks moving with uncertain loyalty. Unsullied moving with silent purpose. Servants running with crates, faces pale. The keep itself had begun to feel hostile, as if stone could choose sides. Qyburn should have been at her elbow, whispering solutions. Instead, the door opened and a guard stumbled in, eyes wild. "Your Grace," he gasped. "Ser Jaime, eh?" Cersei's eyes snapped to him. "He what?" "He's arrested Qyburn," the guard blurted. "The gold cloaks." For a heartbeat, Cersei did not understand the words. Arrested, Qyburn. As if the world had flipped and gravity had become a joke. Then understanding hit, and fury rose so fast it nearly blinded her. "Jaime?" she whispered, and the name tasted like betrayal and love and blood all at once. She turned, sweeping toward the door. The guard stepped back instinctively. Cersei moved through the corridor like a storm, her skirts whispering, her mind already racing through contingencies. Wildfire. She needed the wildfire. If the city had dared to rise, she would remind it who held the power to end it. She reached the stair that led down toward the hidden chamber where Qyburn kept the closest caches. Halfway down, she stopped. The air smelled wrong. Not wrong as in rot or sewage. Wrong as in absence. The faint sharpness she had grown used to, the chemical bite, the hidden promise of green flame was not there. Her breath hitched. She descended faster, ignoring the ache in her legs, and reached the iron door. Two guards stood there, uncertain, spears grounded. They looked like men waiting to be told which way to fall. "Open it," Cersei snapped. One guard hesitated. "Your Grace, Ser Jaime." Cersei's hand flashed out and struck him hard across the face. The sound cracked in the corridor. "Open it," she repeated, and her voice was deadly calm. The guards fumbled with keys. The door swung inward. The chamber beyond was lit by a single torch. The shelves along the walls were there. The niches were there, but the jars, too many were gone. Cersei's stomach turned. She stepped forward, fingers brushing an empty niche as if disbelief could fill it. She looked at the remaining jars, 6, perhaps 8, glowing faintly like sick fireflies. Not enough. Not enough to drown the city. Her mind flashed back to Qyburn's earlier words. Removed. Rats in the walls. "Who did this?" she whispered, and the question sounded almost like fear. A footstep behind her.
Cersei spun.
Jaime Lannister stood at the doorway, sword at his side, golden hand clenched. His face looked older than it had the day before. His eyes were hard in a way she had not seen since the day he returned from the north, when he'd looked at her and asked if she meant it. "Jaime," she said, voice softening like honey. "Come here." He did not move. Cersei's smile faltered, then returned sharper. "You arrested Qyburn," she said, and the words were accusation and disbelief. "I stopped him," Jaime replied. Cersei stepped closer to him, leaving the chamber behind as if the empty niches were a wound she could not look at. "You stopped him from protecting me," she hissed. Jaime's jaw tightened. "He was bringing wildfire into the keep," he said. "You were going to." "I was going to win," Cersei snapped. Jaime's eyes flashed. "By burning children." Cersei's face tightened. "Children grow into rebels," she said. "Husbands grow into traitors. The city grows into a mob." Her voice rose sharp. "Look outside. They're chanting for judgment like they have a right." Jaime's voice went low. "They do," he said. Cersei stared at him, and for a moment the room seemed to tilt. "You," she whispered. "You're saying it too." Jaime's throat worked. "I saved this city once," he said. "I won't watch you destroy it." Cersei's eyes glittered. She stepped closer, close enough to touch, close enough to remind him of years spent tangled together, years where they had been each other's entire world. "You love me," she murmured. Jaime's breath shuddered. "Yes," he said, and the admission looked like pain. Cersei's smile curved, triumphant. "Then you will stand with me," she said. Jaime's eyes closed for a heartbeat. When he opened them, something had changed. "I will not," he said softly. Cersei's face cracked, fury spilling through. "Then you are nothing," she hissed. "You are a man with a sword and delusions of honor." Jaime's mouth twisted. "Honor has nothing to do with it," he said. "This is about stopping madness." Cersei's laugh came sharp and brittle. "Madness?" she repeated. "You think I'm mad because I refuse to kneel?" She stepped back, eyes wild. "They want to drag me into the street and humiliate me. They want to crown a foreign whore with dragons. They want to strip me of everything." Jaime took one step forward. "You can live," he said, and the words sounded like a mercy he hated offering. "Abdicate, exile, leave the city intact." Cersei's eyes widened, then narrowed with contempt. "Leave," she spat, "and let them sing songs about my weakness?" She shook her head. "No." She turned suddenly, sweeping toward the corridor that led deeper into the keep. Jaime followed, faster. "Cersei," he warned. She reached for a lever on the wall, a hidden mechanism that opened a passage toward the pyromancer's old tunnels. Jaime's hand closed around her wrist, iron grip. She hissed, twisting, trying to free herself. "Let me go," she snapped. Jaime's voice broke slightly. "Don't," he said. "Please." Cersei stared at him, and for a moment something lit. The old intimacy flickered. Two siblings, two lovers, two children who had once believed the world could be held in their hands. Then Cersei's face hardened again. "Weak," she whispered, and the word was poison. She jerked her wrist, but Jaime held. She brought her other hand up, nails scraping his cheek, drawing a thin line of blood. Jaime did not flinch. He pulled her close, and his voice dropped to a harsh whisper. "If you do this," he said, "you die alone." Cersei's breath came fast. "So be it," she whispered back, and her eyes glittered with a kind of holy rage. Jaime's face tightened. He made a decision so sharp it felt like cutting off a limb. He twisted her arm behind her back and forced her forward. Cersei stumbled, shocked, fury exploding. "Traitor!" she screamed. Jaime dragged her toward the corridor where gold cloaks waited, eyes wide, uncertain whether to move against their queen. He met Captain Rennick's gaze and saw terror there, but also something like relief. "Take her," Jaime said, voice hoarse. "Alive." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Rennick stepped forward, hands shaking, and placed irons around Cersei's wrists, as if afraid the act itself would summon fire. Cersei's scream turned into laughter, wild, furious. "You think this ends me?" she spat. "You think the city can judge me?" She leaned close to Jaime, eyes burning. "It will burn anyway. You can't stop what I am." Jaime stared at her, blood on his cheek, and said quietly, "Watch me." And in the distance, the bells kept ringing, as if the city itself were holding its breath to see whether the queen would fall without flame. Dawn came to King's Landing like a wary visitor. The sky was pale, the light thin, and the air smelled of wet stone and candle smoke. The bells had finally gone quiet, but their echo lingered, lodged in people's bones as if the city had developed a second heartbeat. The river gate stood open, guarded by gold cloaks and Unsullied standing side by side in uneasy partnership. No corpses lay in the street. No fires burned out of control. People stepped into doorways slowly, peering out as if expecting dragons or lions to leap at them. Instead, they saw soldiers who did not loot. They saw bread being handed out again, organized this time, lines kept, children fed first. They saw Septons walking freely, faces lifted, candles still in their hands like stubborn stars. They saw, far above, Drogon circling once in the pale sky, silent, as if the dragon were a watchful god rather than a weapon. At mid-morning, Daenerys Targaryen entered the city. She came not at the head of a roaring host, but in a small procession, Grey Worm and a line of Unsullied moving like a shield around her, Tyrion Lannister walking at her side with his face drawn tight, and Olenna Tyrell behind them, wrapped in a plain cloak that could not hide the sharpness of her gaze. The small folk gathered along the streets, cautious. They watched the Dragon Queen as if she were a storm that might decide to break. Mothers clutched children. Men with scars leaned on walls, eyes narrowed. Somewhere a woman wept quietly without knowing why. Daenerys stopped at a wide intersection where the street opened toward the Hill of Rhaenys. She did not climb onto a platform. She did not demand silence. She simply stood, letting the city see her as a person rather than a legend. "My name is Daenerys Targaryen," she said, and her voice carried without shouting. "I came to Westeros with fire behind me and war at my heels." She paused, eyes sweeping faces. "I was told the only way to take a throne is to burn everything in my path." A murmur ran through the crowd. Fear remembered, hope uncertain. Daenerys lifted her chin. "I refuse," she said simply. "This city is not my enemy. The people in it are not my enemies." She looked at the bread being handed out nearby. "You have been used as shields. You have been starved and frightened into obedience. That ends today." A man in the crowd shouted, voice raw, "And what do you do with Cersei?" Daenerys's gaze went hard, but not cruel. "She will answer," she said, "not to my dragonfire, to the laws of this realm, to the faith, to the lords who remain, to the people she ruled." Septa Moel stepped forward from the edge of the crowd, charred star lifted high. Septon Emmerich stood beside her, eyes wet but steady. They did not kneel. They did not bow. They simply watched, as if measuring whether this queen understood the weight of what she had promised. Daenerys met their eyes and inclined her head slightly. Not submission, but acknowledgement. Olenna Tyrell watched that gesture and felt something loosen in her chest. Something she hadn't realized was clenched. A queen who could bow her head without losing her spine was a queen who might survive her own power. In the Red Keep, Cersei Lannister was escorted out under heavy guard. Her hands were shackled. Her hair was disheveled. She still walked as if she owned the corridor, chin high, eyes glittering with hatred so bright it looked like confidence. Jaime Lannister followed at a distance, face gray, blood dried on his cheek where her nails had cut him. He did not reach for her. He did not speak. His golden hand hung at his side like a weight he could never set down. When Cersei was brought into the courtyard, the city's sounds seeped in through the gates. Murmurs, shifting feet, the distant cry of a gull. She looked toward the walls as if expecting her men to rally. She found gold cloaks watching her with faces that held no reverence, only exhaustion. Qyburn was dragged behind her, wrists bound, his robe torn, his expression cold with a fury that would never become loud. He met Olenna's gaze across the courtyard and smiled faintly, as if promising the story was not over. Olenna smiled back without warmth. "It's over," she whispered, though she knew men like Qyburn never truly believed they lost until they were in the ground. Daenerys entered the courtyard with Tyrion and Grey Worm at her side. The Dragon Queen looked at Cersei and did not flinch, but she also did not gloat. That restraint was its own victory. Cersei's eyes narrowed. "So," she said softly, "you came without fire." Daenerys's voice was calm. "I came without burning the innocent," she replied. Cersei laughed, bitter. "You'll burn them eventually," she said. "All queens do. Power demands it." Olenna stepped forward before Daenerys could answer. "No," Olenna said, and her voice cut through the courtyard like a knife through silk. "Not all queens." Cersei's gaze flicked to her, shock flickering, then rage. "You," she hissed, You should be dead. I was, Olenna said lightly. It didn't suit me. Cersei's mouth twisted. You think you've won, she spat. You think this is a triumph because there are no flames, but you've only traded one cage for another. Olenna leaned closer, eyes sharp. Perhaps, she said, but at least the city is still standing to complain about it. She straightened, gaze sweeping the courtyard, the guards, the city beyond. You wanted a story where you died dramatic and beloved by fear. Instead you get to live and be judged. Cersei's eyes flashed. Judged by peasants? Judged by consequences, Olenna replied. Daenerys lifted her hands slightly, and Grey Worm's men shifted. Ready. Take her to the sept, Daenerys commanded. Under guard. Alive. Cersei's laughter turned into a snarl. She tried to pull against her shackles, but the guards held. As she was led out, she leaned close to Jaime, voice a hiss meant only for him. You will regret this, she whispered. Jaime did not answer. He stared ahead, eyes hollow, as if watching a fire that had not been allowed to start. The gates opened. The procession moved into the city streets. Small folk watched as their queen, once untouchable, was marched past them in irons. Some spat, some wept, some simply stared, stunned by the simple fact of it. She could be taken without the world ending. Olenna walked behind Daenerys as they followed, her steps slow but steady. The rose ring on her finger bit her skin when she clenched her hand. She thought of Marjorie's laughter in Highgarden's gardens. She thought of the September's green light. She thought of how vengeance had once felt like fire and now felt like a cold clarity. Daenerys glanced back at her, eyes searching. Is it enough? Daenerys asked quietly. Olenna met her gaze. It's a beginning, she said. The hard part isn't taking a city without burning it. She looked out at the watching faces. The hard part is ruling it without becoming the reason someone else lights a match. Daenerys's jaw tightened, understanding flickering. She nodded once. Above them, Drogon's shadow passed again, silent in the pale sky, and for once the city did not flinch. It looked up and saw not death, but possibility. Olenna Tyrell walked through the streets of King's Landing and listened to the absence of screams. In that absence, she found a strange, unfamiliar thing. Peace fragile as glass, but real enough to hold, for now.